Hello, my name's Peter Hill, and I've been very fortunate. I have loved science, and I lived in an age when people were just walking away from their big old style experiments with gas lasers and big experiments in Australia, and they left a lot of equipment around for me to play and experiment with, and I built lasers and gas discharges and wrote papers and eventually let my curiosity lead me into supercomputer simulations and quantum physics as self-taught type of thing. Now this can't be done anymore because those lasers have been cleaned out, thrown out, and the modern people coming through just have computer simulations. I was very, very lucky to do it, and also very lucky to intersect with the people who originally came up with the modern ideas. One of those people I didn't actually meet is Richard Feyman, a very famous, revered scientist. Now, as I've read about him, I've found the things I really liked about him is the way that he cared for his first wife, who was sick for many years with tuberculosis. And then he lived a different life through different things. He wrote a book about his time building the atomic bomb called Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feyman. And he thumbed his nose at the establishment, which meant that he laid low in Brazil, teaching for a year after World War II. And his experience teaching in a different system from the American system taught him very much the need to avoid this received wisdom, rote learning, to get deep insight. And then as a teacher he developed, or I suppose experience, he developed something very famous called the Feyman diagrams. Now, it might mean much to a lot of people, but to physicists this is the most beautiful line drawing, cartoon drawing, which explains deep physics. A simple line that you can draw on the sand, very beautiful thing, and something which you all need to understand. Explains all the collider experiments, all the interactions of particles beyond what we could possibly imagine. It's a great view. So he was in a position, from having done this, to speak to his American students. With his experience from Brazil, he tried to sum it up, and he summed it up like this. He said that intelligence comes into life forms like cats. Cats learn by playing, they experiment with their world. And humans did one step better. They developed language and ability to communicate and store their intelligence. So one generation would experiment, the next generation would benefit from that experiment. But things have gone wrong, because what would happen is they would pass this message on. The message would get distorted, lost, changed. And the remedy that he said was for us to do our own experiments, and from experiments let nature tell us. This has echoed the ideas on different points, say right back from Francis Bacon, who gave us the inductive scientific method. So it is sort of an insight, more seeing several hundred years later that we've got this method of accumulating science. Science has errors, and that we should test it. And so really I've actually tried what Richard has said and developed experiments, and then I've come up against the next problem. So if you like, I am a problem. I love problems, and I love problems so much that I went to quantum physics and really explored it and found some real beauty there. But then I went with my quantum physics and the experiments to the education system and found, oh, it doesn't fit together. And the end result of this is a masterclass for you to go through, and I'll explain that a bit later, but I'll just talk now a bit about my story so far. So I decided, I had several things. There's one story I have to say. There's a little bit of brain trauma, meant that I would forget things, that I have to go back over and over and check and redo things. And if I had received wisdom, I'd have to recheck it, relearn it. So this sort of is like you're driving along and you've been shuttered, you've been chucked out, and you've had to rebuild everything. And this rebuilding, it's a tough thing, but it means going back. And so I went back and built what I thought were quintessential quantum physics experiments that you could show in class. Tick. Done very successfully. And then as I did that, I began to explore these problems of, it's not just that people have got the story wrong, they've got the story wrong, but it's knitted in a fabric which cannot be unwoven. They have said one thing wrong and passed it on to the next person, and it's become locked in. They can't move away from it. So this is something like any sort of physics problem, we can solve it. And the way that I thought of solving it is that around my physics experiment, I can expand it to build it into a social robot. And a social robot is something where you have your physics experiment and you can speak with it, and it can actually learn your personality, and that physics experiment can actually imbibe the expertise of a physicist with that experiment. Now, this may be far away. It's a long-range vision. If I could go back to Richard Feyman, I think in the 60s he said there's a lot of room at the bottom, nanotechnology. And just from the various principles, it's very small, but because it's small you can do a lot with it. And it's very great. This is the same, not that I'm at the same level, this is the same type of insight. This is a problem, but we do have social robots, we do have these experiments, we can fuse the two together. And I've made some scope on that, but bear in mind that I'm going forward and backwards every day, really pushing forward. And so that I built these series of robots, the first prototypes for them, and then I've come against the problem of writing them up and going backwards and forward, and that has led is writing small fragments and putting them aside to mature and come back to improve. So it's a large project A to B to actually write something up and breaking it up into fragments. And as I've broken up into fragments, I've realized that what we have come through is that everybody needs access to these fragments, free fragments, because they have certain things that they need to know and where to go. And thus has come up with the idea of a masterclass. And of course, where do you get the idea from masterclass? Well, every time you switch on the internet, look at YouTube, you get some American actor or some sort of famous self-assured person explaining that here, come and do a masterclass. That is, you've got no prerequisite for what you're going to do, and you come and you can learn. The idea of a masterclass is a student who's practicing is learning from an advanced person, and they can pick up what they want to know. And of course, you have the thing of how do you conduct a masterclass? As there's a series ideas of A to B, but this entire A to B process in education, I have students who know nothing. This is A at this side, nothing, and a small particle of knowledge that I really want to get to, and I've got to produce a guide which gets you there as quickly as possible, avoiding controversy, knowledge, additional things. I've got to get the greatest percentage across. And similarly, the classes I've seen on a similar idea, I've got a group of ideas and I've got to steer them to the other end. But of course, this is not what I've developed here. This is what you'll see is in the link below this YouTube, and also on the actual page which this YouTube is on, will be a presentation where you can actually just move around logic space and graze and get the information to build up, and hopefully build it up that way. So this is a masterclass, but this is really a shopping centre of knowledge for you to go through. So please, after watching this, click and enjoy. And thank you very much, Richard Feyman, for inspiring and guiding me in my next level of knowledge, I'm sure you would understand and appreciate that I've done what you said. I've done the experiment, and the experiment has produced a result which says that we need a greater theory, and my thing is the theory of human ignorance and a method to break through.